Back to that Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.
All right, my next guests are no strangers to those of you who listen to Kevin McCullough Radio. In fact, for the last number of years, both have appeared on nearly a weekly basis, one on Tuesday, one on Friday, but tonight, we got them both together. It was an act of God, nature, and everything else. You could maybe the Avengers as well. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for my very special friends, Bethany Mandel and Carol Markowitz. Ladies, it is wonderful to see you.
Thank you. God, I feel like we had to claw our way onto this show. Really,
it shouldn't have been as hard as it was, but we'll just leave that for another time. Hey, listen, my bride and I had a chance to be with you just a couple of nights ago in New York. I know you've got launch parties going on everywhere. We've been talking about this book, Carol, since before Bethany started coming on my show on a regular basis. You and I were talking about this book. It's finally here. But for those that haven't heard anything about it, why did two moms, as I wrote about in my column this last week, why did two moms who were busy raising, bazillion kids decide to sit down and title a work called Stolen Youth and take on these very difficult subjects?
We just felt like we had all this free time and what we're going to do with it. So we decided to start a book. Go ahead, Bethany.
Yeah, I mean, we just sort of, again, free time. I've had two babies in the last year and a half, and I was like, well, I don't sleep anyway, so I might as well. But the real answer was, we're both columnists. That's our bread and butter. And there's so much content out there churning consistently about this sort of woke assault on childhood. I just got a text message from one of my girlfriends, and I sent Carol a screenshot that her daughter today in the car said, I want to order a chest binder and have a conversation about top surgery. Her daughter's in early middle school, and the mom is panicked. And she said, do you have resources? This is where I know where she lives, but she said, this is where I'm sort of looking for a like-minded provider who will talk to my child about the mental health struggles that she's facing in the wake of, her school was closed for a year and a half, and she's never quite emotionally recovered from that. And she's sort of superimposed all of those mental health issues onto this gender stuff. And her school librarian has been handing her books that the mother is horrified by.
Of course.
The school social worker is doing the same. And we were getting these stories all the time. And we just said, there's got to be something more than just writing a column. And obviously, we're never going to stop writing columns because there's going to be never-ending churn of material out there. But we wanted to do a deeper dive because all of these individual stories are linked. This is part of an experiment that the left is running on our children to remake our society. And it's terrifying. And they're using our kids as guinea pigs. And there's a lot of kids like my friend's daughter who will be so much worse for the wear. When we were kids, the way that girls sort of worked their way through the emotional upheaval of teenagedom, the worst it got was anorexia, bulimia, and cutting, which is horrible. And we treated it like the mental health crisis it was. Now we're saying, well, maybe you're a different gender. And instead of treating that mental health crisis as a crisis, we're validating it. And in so doing, we're maiming them in countless ways, emotionally, physically, and with hormones. And it's going to take 10, 15 years to find out what happens. But in the meantime, we will have scarred an entire generation of children.
What you've just identified has been a trait of the modern left since at least the Obama era, where they use government to institute experimentation into whatever their imagination comes up with. And in the Obama years, they really did it heavily in the military. But under Joe Biden, this has moved center stage right into public education. And Carol, you and I have been talking about it at least that long. But the real sinister thing about this is that they don't just want parents to not have knowledge or permission. They don't want parents to have authority or custody of their child's choices. And they don't want the parents basically in any way to dispute whatever it is that they are shoveling out of their latest wacko idea factory.
That's it. Yeah.
And you have been talking about this for a long time. How much worse has it gotten in just the last 2 years?
I think COVID really brought it to a head where it's happening just at a much more widespread level than it had been before. As you know, I was born in the Soviet Union. So for me, when I realized that it all felt very like the stories my family would share about the Soviet Union, and about severing the ties of the family that have happened in totalitarian societies throughout history, all of that seemed very familiar to me. And suddenly I saw that was like the common thread of this leftism. The example that I often give is, what's the difference between like the old liberals who would indoctrinate college students, for example, versus the new woke? And what I'll say is, the old liberalism is a women's studies degree. The new woke is a women's studies degree, but doesn't know what a woman is. And it's all very, it's all very forced conformity, where you must believe what they are telling you, or you really risk some things. I mean, this mom who is fighting for her child, she might lose a lot of her social standing in her social group. It's very possible. She might have people target her at her job if it comes out that she's not affirming her gender, bending child. And the fact is that all of this is so scary that so many people end up not speaking out or not standing up even for their own kids. And right. That's really what Bethany and I want to explain to people, that nobody's coming to save your kids. It has to be you.
The book is called Stolen Youth, and you can see it on the screen. I want to make sure that everyone knows you need to go get a copy of this, one for yourself and 3 or 4 for moms and families and people that are in your circle, to give them a copy when they come to you and ask you, as Bethany's friend did to her, do you have any resources? The amount of information we are getting on how this is happening and going down is there's plenty out there. It's like a waterfall. It just never stops coming. There's so much information, and there's information out there about how bad it is. Mm-hmm. The unique factor in the last couple of years is that it is actually getting worse. As parents are getting involved, some of this has not lessened at all. And in fact, in just the last couple of years, Kelsey Bowler, who works at the Independent Women's Forum, has been tracking this very carefully, says even with all the negative attention that has been drawn to it, even with Europe shutting down some of their transitioning clinics, the American political machine that is the far left, the Democratic Party, the White House, that whole group has said, no, we're doubling down. We're going harder. We're gonna invest more energy into this, and we're gonna make people feel worse if they don't abide by it. That's why, friend, you need to buy the book, Stolen Youth. Go get it. Carol Markowitz, Bethany Mandel, the authors. And if just as another resource for them, if you would like to get a copy of this podcast, this conversation, that might be a great way to start the conversation with people that you know, because Bethany, you're not the only one who has a friend who's asking those questions. And that's the problem. It is not going away anytime soon. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, what are simple steps that you're encouraging people to do on That Kevin Show? Stay here.
Ready or not, we'll be right back. That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.